I'm going to review some things, and we're going to probably repeat some of the things you said. It wasn't as detailed as I would have liked, so I'm going to get into some extra detail. So there's different types of digestive systems. Single-celled organisms digest their food intracellularly. Usually lysosomes that are filled with digestive enzymes will help do that. Other animals digest their food extracellularly with a digestive cavity. That's us. We focus more on us because it's easier for us to understand. This is when digestive enzymes are released into a cavity, and that specialization occurs in the tract, or what we call an alimentary canal, when it has a separate mouth and anus. Okay, so ingested food may be stored or first subjected to physical fragmentation, which is what we call chewing. And in a minute, I'm going to go through the entire process. So there's physical fragmentation or physical digestion, and then what we have is chemical digestion is what occurs next. And that's when hydrolysis reactions liberate subunit molecules. In other words, proteins are broken down into amino acids through hydrolysis. If you can go back to dehydration, synthesis, and hydrolysis, that's an important concept throughout the digestive system. The products pass through the epithelial lining of the gut and into the blood, and we'll talk about that as well, and waste products will be excreted. Okay, so vertebrate digestive systems are basically what we're focusing on the most, consist of a tubular gastrointestinal tract and accessory digestive organs. So we have the mouth and pharynx, the esophagus, and we're going to go through this and talk about what happens at each stage here. Delivers food to the stomach. The stomach is where preliminary digestion occurs. The small intestine is where all absorption of nutrients occurs, and the large intestine is where water absorption occurs. And the cloaca, or the rectum, is our waste storage. So the gastrointestinal tract is layered. We've talked about histology before and what type of cells line the gastrointestinal tract, but there's different layers. There's a mucosa, which is our epithelial cells, the submucosa, which is made up of connective tissue. You have to have the muscularis part, which is a double layer of smooth muscle. It helps move food through the digestive system. And then we have the serosa, which essentially attaches it's the connective tissue, which essentially attaches, keeps it in place, I guess, is the best way to put it. If you remember dissecting the chicken bone, there was this thin layer around the muscle that was the same thing as the serosa. It's to keep everything in place. Here we're taking a look. We have our lining, okay, we call it the lumen. We have the submucosa, and then we have our muscle, and you see it's double layered, and what happens is they contract at opposite directions to help food move. Excuse me. And then around the outside is this thin layer of the serosa. All right, so there's 5 basic activities involved with digestion. The first one is called ingestion, and that's taking food in the mouth. The second is digestion. It's the breakdown of food mechanically and chemically. The third is enzymatic hydrolysis. It's the breaking down of nutrients into their smaller subunits. Fourth is absorption, which is the passage of food into the circulatory system. Okay, so absorption is the passage of the food into the circulatory system, and the circulatory system, we'll learn, is the delivery system for the body. And then 5 is defecation, and that's the elimination of unusable materials. So we're going to go through, and I know that I'm going really fast right now, and I apologize, but we're going to go through and talk about all of these. So mechanism for chemical digestion, this should be a repeat for you, but let's talk about it anyway, because I know that biochem was hard for a lot of people. Macromolecules are large, therefore they need to be broken down before they can be absorbed in the small intestine. So there's hydrolysis, which is the splitting of the large insoluble molecules into soluble molecules. So if we take a look, maltose is a carbohydrate that is larger, and adding a water breaks the bonds. Then we have 2 glucoses. So in organisms, this process is regulated by hydrolytic, or what we call digestive enzymes, and it's illustrated by the following. So you have maltose plus water, breaks down into simple sugars, proteins plus water breaks down into amino acids, lipids plus water breaks down into 3 fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, So in a similar fashion, polysaccharides such as starch are completely hydrolyzed into simple sugars, and that process is through amylase. With amylase, I know that all of you at this point have probably done the lab, maybe not the juniors. I usually like doing this with AP, but you guys have probably done it so many times, where you have to break starch down into sugar. And if you can remember, think for a second how you did it. Where is amylase? Where does starch digestion occur? The correct answer is in your mouth. As soon as you put starch in your mouth, the amylase starts working and breaking it down to sugar. In fact, if you take a piece of a saltine and you let it sit in your mouth for a period of time, it will start to taste sweet. So this is just an overview of the digestive system. I'm going to go through and talk about these all, okay? So the mouth and teeth are an important part of the digestive system. Carnivorous mammals have pointed teeth, okay? Herbivores have large, flat teeth. Humans are essentially carnivores in the front and herbivores in the back. Take a second to feel those back teeth. Those are all flat. And then your front teeth are for tearing meat. Interesting to think of that way. So we're looking at a generalized vertebrate here. We see the canines and the incisors. These are our meat-eating teeth, right? And then we get to the back, and these are our molars, and these are our grinding teeth. A bird is a little bit different. A bird does not have teeth, but a bird has this really cool crop, which they actually swallow stones, and then food goes in here, gets grinded up by their stones, and then can go down into their stomach for digestion. So let's talk about the process of digestion. So we're starting with ingestion. If you remember, number one was ingestion on the 5 processes of digestion. So we get into the mouth where there's mechanical digestion in our teeth and our tongue, but not all vertebrates, like I showed you before, are breaking up food. So for the bird, it would be the rocks that are breaking up food. Chemical digestion also starts in the mouth, like I said before. Saliva contains amylase, and that's the enzyme that digests starch. Okay. There's also mucin, which is a slippery protein that protects the soft lining of the digestive system. It lubricates food for easier swallowing. If you didn't have saliva, you would choke. You would not be able to swallow. I don't know if you've ever tried, I think I've talked to you guys about this before, the saltine challenge where you typically can't eat more than 10 saltines in a minute. It's impossible because you can't produce enough saliva to swallow those saltines. Interesting little fact. There's also buffers, which neutralize the acid to prevent tooth decay, so you have buffers in your saliva. And then there's antibacterial chemicals in your saliva, which kill bacteria that enter the mouth with food. So, I mean, like I said before, not all bacteria are bad. However, bad bacteria does linger around, and it's on everything. So we have that first line of defense in our mouth, okay? So here it is, starting the journey, mouth. In the mouth, we break up food, digest starch, kill germs, and we moisten food. Important points. So again, just to repeat, chemical and mechanical digestion. Food is masticated. It's what's called when you chew food. And a bolus, which is the lump of food, is formed with saliva in your tongue. So if you, it's weird to think about it this way. While you're eating lunch today, or you're sitting here eating right now, like if you bought snacks, you're chewing your food. Think about how you use your tongue. Your tongue helps mix the saliva into your food, and then it turns into a lump, and then you're ready to swallow it. In the nervous system, we'll talk about different reflexes that make you swallow. Okay, so we're looking at swallowing food and not choking. So there's something called the epiglottis, and if you take a look here, an epiglottis is a little flap, okay? When we swallow, the epiglottis closes over what's your trachea, which is your windpipe. If any of you guys have gotten food down your windpipe, you know how uncomfortable it is. But it only happens when you're eating and laughing, or eating and talking, or you're eating too fast, and the epiglottis doesn't have a chance to close. So there it is. It's a flap of cartilage. It closes the windpipe when you're swallowing, and the food only goes down your esophagus. Peristalsis is that involuntary muscle contraction that will move your food along. So when you swallow, take a look here, the muscles are pushing the food down your esophagus into your stomach, and that's actually how it works through your intestines as well. All right, so there are some digestive glands. We have a group of specialized secretory cells, sorry. They're found in the lining of the alimentary canal or in our accessory organs, and we talk about accessory organs but those glands produce those important enzymes in saliva. So we've gone from the mouth down the esophagus into the stomach. The stomach is where food is temporarily stored. It contains gastric juices, and those are secreted with the food, and has layers of muscle that line the inside of it. Okay? In the stomach, it mechanically and chemically breaks down food. Okay? So the functions of the stomach: food storage. It can stretch to fit 2 liters of food. So think of like a big soda bottle, and that's how much your stomach can stretch. Please don't stretch your stomach that much. I would imagine you get sick. It also, because it's full of acid, disinfects food. Okay, there's hydrochloric acid in your stomach. It's got a pH of 2. It kills bacteria. It also aids in chemical digestion, but there's an enzyme called pepsin in your stomach. Pepsin is responsible for the breaking down of proteins into amino acids. Okay. The stomach is made out of protein. What stops the protein from digesting itself? That's a really good question. So you have this layer of mucus around your the inside of your stomach, and that protects it from the pepsin and the acids digesting the actual stomach. But if you know anyone that has an ulcer is caused by a certain type of bacteria that's actually found in human feces. And I'm not saying people with ulcers ate feces, but at some point they either ate food when someone didn't wash their hands appropriately or whatever. It's always important to wash your hands. So they ingested this bacteria. This bacteria forms a hole in the mucus lining of the stomach, and it's really painful because now you have hydrochloric acid and pepsin trying to digest your stomach. All right, there it is. All right, so here we go. We're down into the stomach. I know this is hard to see. It kills germs, it breaks up food, it digests protein, and it stores food. There is a sphincter, okay, we call this, there's 2 sphincters here. This is the pyloric sphincter. These close the stomach off. Real quick, we have gastric juices. So here we go. I just talked about this. This is a repeat. Okay. So at the end, this bottom bullet is important. After being in the stomach, I don't know if you guys have ever thrown up before and seen that your food is all liquid. It's broken down into a really thin liquid. It needs to be broken down into a thin liquid because once it passes through the stomach and that sphincter, it needs to go into the first section of the small intestines where it will be digested or sucked into the circulatory system. So we call that chyme. It's now called chyme. So let's take a break and look at our accessory organs. We have a pancreas, the gallbladder, the spleen. Okay, so let's talk about what the gallbladder does. Some of you may know people that don't have a gallbladder anymore. It's not a vestigial structure, however, you can live without it comfortably. It's a little pouch structure. It's located near the liver, and it concentrates and stores bile. And what is bile? Bile is what it breaks up our fat. It physically breaks apart fats, okay? It's bitter, green, yellow, alkaline fluid. Any of you guys have been really sick with the flu, you've probably thrown up bile, and it tastes really, 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 really bitter. So I know you're all thinking about it right now, like, yeah, I've done that before. Everyone has. It's stored in the gallbladder between meals, and once it's eaten, it's discharged into the first part of our small intestines, which we haven't talked about yet, which is called the duodenum. Our pancreas is an organ which secretes both digestive enzymes and hormones. Pancreatic juices digest all major nutrient types, and nearly all digestion occurs in the small intestines, and all digestion is completed in the small intestines. So the pancreas has a directly puts all its digestive enzymes in. The pancreas is really important for digestion. Okay, so we have trypsin and chymotrypsin, and that's for digesting proteins. And then you have amylase. Okay, there's also some buffers that then the acid needs to be neutralized from the stomach because the small intestines can't handle that acidic environment. We have the liver. The liver has a bunch of functions. It's our largest internal organ. It produces bile, which is stored in the gallbladder. Okay, which we know breaks up fat, and it adds a detergent. So for our purposes, that's what it does. Bile contains colors from old red blood cells collected in the liver. Okay, so the iron in the red blood cell rust makes our feces brown. Had this argument with a lot of people. It has to do with a lot of different things, but because you have iron in your blood, and we'll talk about that, it rusts in the liver, and that's what makes your poop brown. So we have our pancreas, okay, liver, sorry. All right, let's talk about our small intestines. So almost all chemical digestion takes place here. And this is a really crappy picture, but your small intestines are just smaller in diameter. However, they can be anywhere from 6 to 8 meters long in your body. So think of a meter stick and then add 6 to that. We also know, and I had you guys do an activity where you colored a villi, that it's lined with these small villi. These villi increase surface area for absorption of nutrients, okay? So the function is chemical digestion. It's the major organ of digestion and absorption. It absorbs through the lining, and like I said before, it's over 6 meters long. It has a huge surface area, which is about the size of a tennis court. Okay, so there's 3 sections to the small intestines. It's the duodenum, where most digestion occurs, the jejunum, which is where absorption of nutrients and water occurs, and the ileum, which is the absorption of nutrients and water as well. So take a look up here. Some people call it the duodenum. I like to call it the duodenum, just so you know. I don't know how Bozeman pronounced it. And then in here, our jejunum, and then our ileum is the last part. Okay, so duodenum is the first section. Acid food from stomach mixes with digestive juices from the pancreas, okay, liver, and the gallbladder. Okay, so you can take a look here. We have our acid chyme. Our bile comes in. Pancreatic juices come in. Remember, they're lowering the pH because you don't want it to be too acidic in here. It will damage the small intestine. Okay, you can see everything kind of enters right in here. So, that's interesting. There's small intestines isn't in there. All right, so absorption, it occurs through villi and microvilli. So again, we've kind of touched on this before. But if you take a look, so we have our villi, and then on top of our microvilli to increase that surface area just a little bit more, there are these finger-like projections, and that's where absorption occurs. So what you can see here is we have capillaries, and we have absorption, okay, occurring through these cells. The vein carries blood to a hepatic, that's our, goes to our liver. And that's a microscopic view of what a villi looks like. So we're at 5, we're completing our journey. So we've kind of come down here into the stomach, we've gone through our small intestines, okay? Now we're into the large intestines. Large intestines are larger in diameter, however shorter, okay? So the function is to reabsorb water. We use about 9 liters of water every day in digestive juices, okay? 90% of our water that we ingest is reabsorbed into our large intestines, okay? If not enough water is absorbed, we have diarrhea. So when you have diarrhea, that means water is not being absorbed, which is why when you have diarrhea, they tell you to drink a lot because you don't want to get hydrated. Okay, when too much water is absorbed, you're constipated. So we have our waste products going through. So everything's been, so let's say our food has gone through the stomach, all the major nutrients that you need for your body have been absorbed through the small intestines, okay? Then at this point, when we get into the large intestines, we have waste. This is all stuff we don't need, but before the waste exits, we need to get the things that we do need out of it, and that mostly is water, and there's something else we're going to talk about. So solid materials pass through, okay, they're undigestible, mostly fibers. Water is absorbed, vitamins K and B are reabsorbed with the water, so those vitamins are really important. Okay, the rectum is where solid waste exit the body. So you have waste filling up in the rectum, that means you're going to say, hey, you got to go to the bathroom, okay? Inside of your large intestines is a community of very helpful bacteria called E. coli. E. coli gets a bad rap. There is a bad strain of E. coli, but not here. E. coli produces vitamins, okay, K and B. It also generates gases, which is the gases that you produce when you pass gas is produced by these bacteria, and the reason why it smells is because methane and hydrogen sulfide smell really bad. So, but when you fart or when you pass gas, it's because these bacteria are working in your gut, and it's healthy. It's a healthy sign. Okay. So we're taking a look at the appendix is a small vestigial structure here at the end of the large intestines. We don't know what it did. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of theories out there. Part of our immune system. It was part of it helped us digest lots of fats when we had lots of fats. But the only way you're going to know it's there now is if it gets infected. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so we're looking at the rectum, the last section of the colon. This is what eliminates our feces and undigested materials, extracellular waste. There's a lot of cellulose from plants, roughage, or fiber. There's masses of bacteria in there. I need to quickly talk about nutrients, and I know this is a lot. Micronutrients are vitamins, minerals, and water. Our macronutrients are the large molecules like carbs, lipids, proteins. Okay, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. I'm going to go kind of quick. All right, so organic molecules required for metabolic reaction, those are our vitamins. They cannot be made by the body and are needed in trace amounts, which means really small amounts. We get them from our food or if you take vitamins. Many act as enzyme cofactors or what we call coenzymes, and that's what help our enzymes work better, okay? So we have minerals that we need, normal metabolism, components of cells and tissues, nerve conduction, muscle contraction, and these can only be obtained from our diet as well. So it's really important that we pay attention to our diet. We have iron for hemoglobin, iodine for what's called our thyroid gland, which we will talk about, and then calcium for bones, okay, and then sodium for nerve transmission. So there appears to be a quantitative relationship between nutrients and health. Imbalances can cause disease, okay? And many studies have concluded nutrition is a major factor in cardiovascular disease, hypertension, and cancer. I know I just cruised through that, and that's 22 minutes. I apologize. I'm going to have some more work for you guys to do. So thank you. Talk to you later.